future that
the love of God gripped me.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Well, here we are in this beautiful city. And you know what? God is speaking all the time. His word is clear if we hear his voice. Today, we want to talk about what do you do with the prophetic word when God speaks? You know, there's a lot of confusion over this. There's a lot of people who are waiting for things to happen. There are a lot of other words that people have received. They're wondering if it really is God or not. We're going to explore this topic today. Stay tuned. Hi there. Thank you for tuning in today to Prophet Talk. We are really, really glad that you're here. And today we're going to talk about what do you do with your prophetic word? Now, you know, there's a lot of people that are prophesying. We're not saying anything good or bad about that. It's just a lot of is going on out there. People are seeking prophecies because we want to hear what God says. We hunger to hear the voice of our Father. We hunger to hear any information that can help us while we're here on the earth. So prophecy is something that has existed throughout eternity. You can look at the ancient Sumerian, Akkadian texts. There's all kinds of prophetic things in there, prophecy in there. It is everywhere. It's everywhere throughout history. So why is that? It's because God, the Spirit, is speaking, and he does want us to understand what he's saying so that it will help us. But what do you do with prophecies when they're not coming to pass? Or maybe they are real prophecies, but are we supposed to help God in this process? Well, we're going to talk about that today. And there's a particular scripture that we're going to start off with. And it's in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 31. It says this, "For you can all prophesy in turn, so that everyone may be instructed and encouraged. And the spirit of prophets is subject to the control of the prophets. For God is not the God of disorder, but of peace." Hallelujah for the word of God. So when we're talking about prophecy, we need to talk about first the three different levels of prophecy, because this will help us understand what to do with your prophetic word. So the three levels of prophecy, the first level is encouragement. Encouragement is something that is exactly what it says it is. It's just something that just helps you. It strengthens you. It's not directional. It doesn't necessarily give you direction. It's just something that is inspiring. It's motivating. It gives you a pat on the back. It helps you. It's a very, very good thing. Now, are those types of things by the Holy Spirit? Yes. They are probably more prophetic than prophecy, because true prophecy from a biblical standpoint is always futuristic. But because of the churches and because of the way that people have been functioning, things like this is also called prophecy. So we need to talk about that. So when you get something encouraging, don't throw it out. Just be happy that you have it. Be glad they didn't say anything crazy or ridiculous or something that was not so positive. Encouragement is something that we all need in our life. The second level is direction. Direction is very, very important because we want to hear God leading us and guiding us and helping us, positioning us into the future that he has for all of us. You know, we all have a mandate. It's the call of God upon our life. And what prophecies are is they are like things on the highway. They're like road signs that help us understand if we're in the right direction or if we need to be on another road, if we're on a detour, which is the wilderness, or if we're moving exactly on the motorway that God has for us. So direction is very, very important. This is also the things that create problems for leaders and for churches, because the way that you deliver these things sometimes is not as accurate. Sometimes what people get really is God, but then they want to add to it and bring explanation, and that's called commentary. We must never bring our own commentary into a prophetic word. If there is commentary, we need to say, now this is me speaking, trying to give clarification on what you've just received. I think a lot of times when people get prophetic words, the things that confuse them is that there's an element to the prophecy that is a key, that is important. But then there are elements, things in the prophecy that were commentary. And it's very difficult to determine which is this and which is that. In every prophecy, true prophetic word, prophecy, directional word, there is something called the key word. That is the thing that the Holy Spirit is actually breathing on. That may be something like, I have a plan, or it's 3 steps forward now, and I'm going to show you what they are, and then an explanation of them. That's the key in a prophecy. The key is the thing that the Holy Spirit really wants to convey and get across. So when you get the key word, that's the actual substance of what God wants to deliver to you. But when you hear commentary, it's not as powerful, and it doesn't sound quite the same as that key that God has given. It's important for us to understand that in prophecy, it's like painting a picture. It's something that is developed. It isn't a formula. You might learn different methods, different techniques, but it's still up to you. So when the person is delivering a prophetic word, they might not deliver it exactly the way that it was communicated from heaven. Now, we all try to do that, but there are always things that get in the way, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So if you hear a prophecy and there's things in it that you know really are God, that you can hold on to, and then there are other things that you're going, how does this fit? Or what does this mean? Or I don't understand. Then you need to hold that in neutral. Now, that's the first thing I want to say in judging prophecy. Hold every prophetic word in neutral. If it really is from God, it will come to pass. You don't have to try to help God. It's Him that brings it. You don't have to do anything except walk in His ways, walk before Him, serve Him. Don't take detours. Go into the wilderness. Do things that are sinful. Keep walking with Him, and the prophetic word that He gave to you will come to pass. That's an important thing for us to understand. For those of you that are listening, avoid in every way in giving commentary. Now, how do you do that? It's by obedience. In other prophet talk, we will talk about how you prophesy correctly. But this particular one is about what do you do with the prophetic word when you receive it. The third level of prophecy is impartation. Impartation is a very, very important word. It's a huge word. Impartation is when you get a prophetic word and change comes upon you immediately. It is spontaneous. It is suddenly. That means that the Holy Spirit in that word released a creativity, like on the day when everything was created from the very beginning. That rhema word, that word is something that is creative in its own way, and it releases something that brings a transformation in that particular area in your life. Now, prophets can move in impartation. Those who are learning to prophesy, those who have gift of prophecy, they cannot. It doesn't work the same way because it is something that comes out of the Christ gift that is given to the Ephesians for ministry. If you sit under a real pastor and you're with him, you receive an impartation from him. The same from a teacher, from her, from him. The same with apostles. This is the way impartation works. So when we're talking about these three levels of prophecy, you have to make a determination of which one actually was delivered to you. That's an important thing. Now, where people have the most problems is prophecies about the future. That's where the greatest issue is. Now, when you are listening to a prophetic word, there's certain things that you probably need to be aware of. The first one is the character of the individual. What kind of an individual is this? Do they have a good reputation? Do they have a track record of giving correct prophecies? Or is this something that came out of a meeting and someone brought it? Maybe a new minister, someone from another situation that doesn't know your church, doesn't know your leaders. They brought something that is untested, unproved, unknown to the leaders. And so because of that, it creates a problem. Those types of situations are really very, very difficult, and they create so many problems in people's lives. So the first one is, when you're evaluating the individual, is evaluate the character, evaluate what's actually going on in that individual's life. And if you do that, then you will find yourself in a position of being able to receive what's given or to reject what's given. Now, you don't have to receive every prophetic word that you get. You don't have to receive it. You can kick it back to God. If you don't like it, don't receive it. God is big enough to bring it back to you 2 or even 3 times. Now, if you get prophetic words that are directional words like this from an individual and you're not really sure about their character, again, hold it in neutral. Allow God to bring prophetic word, bring confirmation by the Spirit, either through other prophetic words or through your daily devotional life with God. He speaks to you by the Holy Spirit. If you have that, then you're on safe ground. You can move to the next step, okay? But what do you do if someone doesn't have a good reputation? Well, people can prophesy correctly even when they don't have a good reputation. You know, in the Bible, there was a prophet named Balaam, and he did that. And he wanted to curse the people of God, but he blessed the people of God in a prophecy. And God even had to use a donkey to communicate his will to the prophets. You know what? That is a very sobering thing for me. It keeps me in my place if I try to get too big, because God is God. If he wants to get his will communicated, he'll get his will communicated. But if you get someone who has questionable reputation, I think that you're on a very, very difficult terrain. The foundation that you're standing on is something that you probably need to evaluate. I would submit that prophetic word to 2 or 3 different leaders and say, what do you think about this? And help them evaluate it. Now remember, encouraging words probably don't need to be evaluated. They're encouraging. Directional words and words about the future, they need to be evaluated. They need to be judged. Now, in every prophecy that I give, I try to do one thing. And here's what it is. I try to have it recorded. Why? Because I'm accountable. Now, I know that there are a lot of people in different denominations where they will say, I want to give you a personal word, come over here. And then they are very, very quiet. They do it in secret and they give it to you. Can I say this? The prophecies in the Bible were public. They're public. They were given before kings. They were given before a multitude of people, congregations, other prophets. So if you have something that is directional or futuristic, it needs to be given in front of people who can evaluate what you're giving. If there are people who can't evaluate what you're giving, please wait. Now you might say, but I have this moving of the Holy Spirit, I have to give it now. But if it's a real word from God, you can wait 2 or 3 minutes until somebody shows up to listen and to evaluate. just make sure that it's a real spiritual leader and not just a friend who would just give you a pat on the back and say, yeah, I think it was God. You need people who really know what this is and can make a really good evaluation on this, okay? This is important, especially because these things can be so damaging if you receive them and they're not received in a right way. And if you believe them and somehow they didn't come out the way that they should have. All right. Now, what do you do with prophecies that are real, but they haven't come to pass yet? That's a huge issue. Did it not come to pass because of the individual prophesied wrongly? Or am I somehow in trouble with God? And because I'm in trouble with him, he's waiting to deliver his word until I'm in a position where all of this can be fulfilled. Well, let me say this. If God delivers a prophetic word, don't you think he already knows your life? Don't you think he already knows the end destination? And you might say, but what if I miss the will of God? Well, if you're really trying to serve him, even if you get off track, he will put you on track because that's the way that he is. All things work for the good of those who love God and who are called according to his purposes. So, if you have a prophetic word and it hasn't come to pass, welcome to the club. I've had real prophetic words, and I'm still waiting for them to come to pass. There are people in the Bible that had to wait 24, 25 years, even 40 years for a prophetic word to come to pass. Think about Abraham and Sarah. The prophetic word came to him that he would have a son and he would be the father of nations. Now, you know that he tried to help God, and Ishmael was born. God blessed Ishmael. They are an incredible people that are all over the face of the earth. And let me just say this, God loves the people of the earth, and he loves Ishmael. He loves Israel, he loves Ishmael. It's the son of Abraham. But when Isaac was born, this guy was not a young guy. He was 99 years old. He was an old guy. And the Bible says that the way to reproduce didn't function. It wasn't there anymore. But yet God gave him a prophetic word, and it happened. And his wife was 90 years old. 90 years old. Now, my mom is 90 years old. And if I ask her, Mom, would you like to have another child? She would look at me like, oh no, I don't want to go through this one again. And she would say, 90 years old? How in the world did that happen to Sarah? But it did happen. God is faithful to his word. And if a prophetic word is real, it will happen. It will happen. God also spoke about Isaac in a very powerful way, where they were going up to the place of sacrifice. And Isaac asked, where is the sacrifice? And Abraham said, God will provide. Now, we know the story of how he was ready to kill his son out of obedience to what God said, but God provided a ram, a male sheep, and that was given as a sacrifice. Now, I know that people can say, that's a little bit difficult, that's a little bit rough, but it comes down to this. It comes down to walking with God, obeying God, and let his word come to pass. For me, when I was called to come to Europe, I had a couple of prophetic words that I really did not want to be fulfilled. And so I was running from them like Jonah in the Bible. But he made it so clear that this really was him, that I packed up my family and we moved to Scandinavia, and we've been here for many, many years. So the obedience of a prophetic word, even when you don't want that word to come to pass, it is incredibly important. So if a word takes a long time to be released or to be revealed, it can happen. Now, sometimes you get prophetic words that don't come to pass. What do you do with those? Well, a very interesting story. A man that I know received 3 prophetic words, 2 prophets. One was a real prophet, one I don't know. And then another one from someone that he liked. They said essentially the same thing, that he would be rich, that he would have a lot of money, that there would be a river of gold, and that he would be blessing other people. And because people heard this, they jumped on and they were bringing all of their thoughts to him about, I need this for my job site. I need this for my business. I need this in my personal life. I need to get out of debt. And he was so kind, and he was saying, well, when I receive this, I will help you. The problem is, 3 years later, none of that happened. None of that happened. Now, was there a time frame that was given to that? No, there was no specific time frame. So he came to me and he said, was any of these prophetic words right? And my answer was, I have no idea, but I can say this: if it is correct, then despite the time frames that we think, God is able to do what he's able to do. But what happened to him is that the people who were his friends left him. And so at the end of 3 years, he was mostly alone. Now that's a very tragic story. This is not the way that things are supposed to work. So it's the character of the person that's giving. It's the reputation of the character that's given. When you get a prophetic word, kick it into neutral, hold it there, and let God the Holy Spirit, let him confirm it. If you know that it's a real prophetic word, but the timing on this is not what you think or what you want it to be, you just have to stand pat and let God bring it to you and release it to you. If there are things that are commentary in the prophetic word, when you listen to that word and when you reevaluate it, and maybe you listen to it 20 times, when you reevaluate it, you can feel the Holy Spirit moving on this, but not moving on that when you're listening to it. That's a signal that this part is the key, this part could be commentary. You need to make that evaluation, because listening to a prophetic word, even if it's many years later, if it's God, the anointing of the Holy Spirit is still going to be there. So, please, don't despise prophecy. Prophecy is a good thing. Prophecy is something that God brings to us because he wants us to know his will and to fulfill his will on the earth. The last thing I want to talk about is, what about if I get in the way? If I make mistakes, can I negate or can I make the word that was given to me void? And the answer to that is very, very simple. Don't you think God is big enough he would know the mistakes that you're going to make in your life? Don't you think that he knows the things that you're going to do that's going to take you off track? Now, I have a friend, a very, very wonderful prophet. He's very seasoned and very old now, and he says, prophecy is also revealing the possibilities of what God wants to bring to people. I think that's true. But at the same time, if there's information in there that is very specific, that is very key to that individual, it's not about an alternative possibility. It's about what God wants to do. So when you have prophetic words like that, and you don't see them come to pass, don't get angry. Just hold on tight. If you get in the way, then come back. You know, there are many stories about people being restored in the Bible and about the blessings of God coming back double upon them. Yes, that's a real thing. So don't be afraid. Hold on to your prophetic word. Fight with your prophetic word. You hold that prophetic word up to God and say, you said this. Now, God, your word, it doesn't come back void. It always is fulfilled. It always produces fruit. I'm holding this up to you, God, and I'm waiting for this to be fulfilled. You do that, and don't be surprised what God will do in your life. So, Father, I thank you for prophecy. I thank you for your word that is released and revealed to your people. We need it. We must have it. But God, please, equip us and help us as spiritual leaders and as the children of God to know the difference between what really comes from you, what really comes from us, what really comes from a bad source, and what really comes from a good source. And may we focus on the key of what you're bringing to us, because that is the substance of what you want us to live in and become. And we give you the glory, Lord, in everything. And thank you, God, for blessing your people today. Now stay tuned. We have another very exciting interview. I think you're going to enjoy this. I think this is going to be a really important interview. Stay tuned. So today, my friends, Steve Pailthorpe, who's a very dear friend of mine, he is a well-known, recognized prophet, as well as a very well-known entrepreneur in the UK and in Europe. Steve, thank you so much for coming on Prophet Talk today and being a part of the program.
It's wonderful to see you, David, and looking forward to today's session on everything that God is going to be speaking to us about.
Well, today we are talking about how to evaluate a prophetic word, and I know that you have a lot of experiences in this and that you can really help us with understanding. So I'm just going to let you go. And how do you evaluate a prophetic word?
Well, it's such a wonderful subject, isn't it? And, you know, the first thing that we have to look at here is to understand that prophecy is a beautiful gift from God. It's him speaking to us. But it's also something that we're commanded to weigh and test. And of course, 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 20 and 21 tells us that. And not every word spoken over your life, of course, is from God. And even those words that have come from the Spirit of God, they have to be properly handled. They have to be properly stewarded in order to bear fruit. And so I think the first thing we've got to understand is to look at what is prophecy, because prophetic words reveal your prophetic potential in God. You know, when you get a word spoken over your life, that is who God's potential for you to be is. You see, they show us who you can become and what God desires to do in and through your life, but they're not guarantees. It's an invitation from God to come into your prophetic potential. And when Paul writes to Timothy, his spiritual son, in 1 Timothy 1, verse 18, he tells him to wage war with the prophecies that are made about you. And of course, we know that every prophetic word has to be received through faith. And of course, Hebrews 11, verse 6 tells us that. So prophecy enables us to partner with God to achieve everything that he wants in our lives. And it comes through both obedience and faith. And of course, both of those elements require action in our lives, not just a passive waiting. Often I talk to people and they're like, well, I've received this amazing prophetic word over my life. And I'll say to them, well, what are you doing with that word? How are you stewarding that word in order to bring it into fruition? And if we just simply wait just with that word around our shoulders, in our heart, without actually doing anything to bring that prophetic word into fruition, then ultimately that thing's likely of it coming to pass is very low. The second thing we've really got to do, in my view, is that we've got to evaluate the source. We've got to test the vessel, the person who's delivered the word. You see, the scripture teaches us that not all prophecies are reliable or even mature. And Jesus warns of this, of course, in Matthew 7. And it says that people can prophesy in his name, but still be out of relationship with the Father. So we've got to ask a few questions. Is the person that is giving this word over you, are they known for being someone of good fruit? Secondly, are they accountable to leadership in their own lives? And thirdly, are they then displaying humility and love in the way that they're operating? Of course, we can have amazing spiritual gifts, but if we lack love, then of course that's the core of who we're meant to be. So is the individual operating in a gift of prophecy or in their office as an Ephesians 4 prophet. And the two are very, very different. And many people who are receiving words of encouragement, of course, the gift of prophecy primarily, David, for encouragement, edification, and exhortation. However, if someone is moving in the function, the office of the prophet, then there's a governmental role within the body. And both are two separate ways in which the prophetic word can be spoken over your life. So, of course, the gift strengthens, it encourages, it gives us comfort. And that's what 1 Corinthians 14 verse 3 tells us. And if the prophetic word that you've received isn't doing those things, the likelihood is that it's being given outside the parameters that the scripture sets up for the gift of prophecy. Now, if it's an office of a prophet, someone who is a fivefold ministry prophet bringing a word from heaven, then it might come with correction, direction. It might be preparing you for works of service, or it might even be giving you a very specific instruction about the future. And more often than not, there tends to be activation words within that prophecy that might be conditional. If you do this thing, then you're going to receive this. And if you do this, then you're going to move into that. So not everyone who prophesies carries a governmental anointing. We need to really understand that in the prophetic, there are levels of authority that are attached to the vessel that gives the word. It's really, really key to consider. And of course, thirdly, we've then got to start testing the content. Does this word align with scripture? You see, every prophetic word must align with the written logos word of God. It's the plumb line. And, David, you and I say this all the time, but, if there is a word that is given that doesn't align with God's character, if it doesn't carry the love, grace, and heart of God, if it doesn't create peace in my spirit, or does it even challenge me? If it's outside of the logos written word of God, then that word is not a word from heaven. So a true prophetic word will never contradict scripture. It's usually, and most importantly, always backed up by the word of God. So we've looked at how there we understand the vessel, and we understand how we weigh a word. But then we've got to test the spirit. What's the source of that word? You see, words come from all over the place, don't we? We get impressions, we get things coming to us, and not all of those words are words from the Father. You see, you can have words from God, words from men. Those are soulish prophecies that just come from people's personal opinions, their biases, or even their emotional position. And of course, the enemy loves to speak false things over your life. And words from the enemy always come with confusion. There's fear, pride, even manipulation in there. But a true prophetic word from the Lord, it reveals God's heart and his character. It glorifies Jesus. It brings you into God's prophetic potential for your life. The Apostle Paul commands us in 1 Thessalonians 5:20 and 21, do not despise prophecy, he says, but test everything, holding fast to what is good. So how do we handle our prophetic word that we've received? Well, once we've received that word, we've got to begin this process that I like to call stewardship. So one thing that I do is I write it down. Habakkuk 2:2, always, write the vision down. If you've got that word, so many words these days are given via YouTube or on something that's recorded. Get that on your phone and start to pray over that word. Listen back to it. Get that word deeply within your spirit. Next thing to do is to start weighing it with leadership. Accountability and covering spiritual authority is a wonderful protection, but weigh that word with a person who is your leader. Take it to them and ask them to pray it through with you. Just don't act on that word immediately unless there's been a clear confirmation. I had someone come to me the other day, though, and they said, I've got this word about me selling my house and I've got to move on right now. And I said, wait a minute, let's just weigh this word, because this was a significant life decision. And actually, as a result of them praying through that word, they're now at a point of going, well, we don't need to do that. We don't need to act in haste. So weigh the word. Take time before God and with your leaders to go through it and ask the Lord for his wisdom and direction. And the thing is, 2 Corinthians 13 speaks about God confirming his word to us. God is not going to just give us a word and leave us isolated. If it is a word from the Father and you ask him to give you confirmation, then you're going to start getting prophetic confirmations through others all over the place. So prophecy is an unfolding of process You see, between promise and fulfillment, there is a season in your life of preparation. And many times prophetic words seem further away before they come to pass. And that's the refining fire of God working in your life. So remember God's timing in all of this. God's now and your now are often two different things. I know in my own life, there have been times I've just said, I've got this word from God. I need to do this and I need to see it to come to pass now. And I felt in my spirit an urgency about it, but then a sense of disappointment months or even years down the line because that prophetic word didn't come to pass in the season that I thought. You see, just because God speaks something now doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. You need to rest in his timing. Keep your heart soft and your faith active and believe God to really speak into the depths of your heart concerning his timing for the delivery of that word. And that will bring you into such a sense of his peace over your life. And look, the final point I really wanted to make on this is that we really need to wage war in the realm of the spirit to fight and contend for your prophetic word. What do I mean by that? Well, every word that God speaks will always come with opposition because the enemy does not want you to walk in the promises that God has spoken over your life. And the moment that word is declared and decreed, the enemy is often going to immediately come to try and steal the seed of God's word. So how do you deal with that? Well, first of all, declare it out loud, Romans 10:17. Secondly, start to pray it back to the Lord in faith, believing his word to come to pass. Resist doubts and fear and discouragement and really begin to start thanking the Father concerning what he wants to do in our lives. So prophecy we know is powerful. It reveals God's heart for your future. But prophecy is not a shortcut. It's not the replacement for seeking God personally. It's an invitation to partner with the Holy Spirit to walk with him into your destiny. So don't be afraid, dear friends, as you're listening to this, to test every word, because not every word given belongs to you. You can let words go. It's okay to do that. Ask the Lord to reconfirm them to you and hold on to the words that God has spoken over your life that you believe to be true. Treasure them, because God will watch over his word to perform it, and he is faithful to bring it to pass. So here's a final thought. Prophecy is a gift, but the giver of the prophetic word is the goal. The giver of the word is the goal. How do we receive God's heart's desire for the individual, and how do we convey that word in a way that brings that individual love? So stay close to Jesus, grow in your relationship with him, and those words are going to flourish with clarity, power, and grace in your life.
That's really, really excellent. All of these points are superb. Can I just ask you a couple of questions here as we're continuing in the program? There are some people who have received prophetic words, and they were very specific, and they're holding on to those words. Things in regards to finances or a job situation or family or a child. And some of these things haven't come to pass. So there is this question about, have they missed it, or is God somehow refining them and they're in a process of this sorting out? And the example is Abraham waited 25 years before the fulfillment of the promise that he had with a son. Do you have any pointers on this to help people in this area?
Do you know what? There's so much confusion over this subject, isn't there? And one of the things that I see often is, I had a lady come to me the other day, and she was in her 50s, and she said, God spoke over my life that I was going to be a mother, and she hadn't conceived. And, you know, that whole area had caused her so much trauma in her life because she really believed and held on to a prophetic word about her being a mum in the natural. And, you know, I actually had to work that through with her and say, okay, you haven't seen this word come to pass, but was there a correct understanding of that word? Were you actually meant to be a spiritual mother to other people? Were you meant to actually operate as a spiritual authority over different people? And what she came to realize was so clear. Firstly, she realized that the person who gave the prophetic word actually had a desire for that individual, which was a desire of great love for her, that this person who gave this prophetic word just wanted her to be happy. And so gave her this word to say, you're going to be a mum and God wants to do this in your life. But the reality of that never came to pass. And so dealing with the disappointment, understanding that that word that was given probably wasn't a word from the Father, but nonetheless carried the heart of God's love for the individual. And then secondly, for that individual to then say, do you know what? I believe that God has called me to be a spiritual mother to others. And therefore, how can I then apply the elements of what God has spoken over my life and what I know to be true in this next chapter? And so she then began the process of asking for forgiveness, for just trusting in that word, forgiving that individual, releasing them, but then also getting back into a place of faith where she could really begin to start praying over the future of how God might use her as a spiritual mother over other people. So we've got to really contend with the word and realize that not every word that is given is a prophetic word. And as I said in I think the third point I made, the vessel that gives the word is so important. What's the character of that individual? Who is that person? Are they operating just out of a gift of prophecy, which is for encouragement, edification, and exhortation, or are they moving as an Ephesians 4 fivefold ministry prophet? And even prophets get it wrong, guys. So you can have someone who's very credible that may well have heard from the Father, but realize that you go through life events, things change, decisions we make can affect the prophetic course of our lives. So in that, staying close to the Father, allowing him to reaffirm and speak to us again and again concerning his word for our lives is so important.
I think this is very essential, what you're saying, and incredibly important. I think where people make mistakes when they're giving a prophetic word is prophesying about the future, revealing about the future. It's one thing when you're doing encouragement or sharing pictures or giving insight or perceptions, but when you start prophesying about somebody's future, you move into the realm from a gift of prophecy into the role of a prophet, because prophets have that kind of revelation. God gives it to them. And I think that we have a lot of people who are prophesying out of their own spirits. It's very interesting in the Old Testament, it says that if a prophet prophesies about the future and gets it wrong, kill him. And in another scripture, it says, he wasn't from me. And I know that you see and I see the same thing, where we see a lot of YouTube people, a lot of people prophesying about the future, and a lot of it is just out there. So I think that what you have said about the credible source, the reputation, and we only have 2 minutes here. Could you mention something about accountability?
Absolutely. Accountability in the prophetic is so important. Accountability for the word that you've received, but also for the individual that is giving the word. You know, as prophets, we need to hold each other to account. There are times where in the moments, the flow of the anointing, the grace that is around, it's very easy to speak out words that aren't necessarily the word that the Father has given you into your spirit. And so as prophets, we need to hold one another accountable to ensure that the words that we're giving are words from heaven. What does that look like? Well, first and foremost, it's a tenderness of heart, humility to say, do you know what? I got it wrong. And actually in that, grace to forgive, but also mentoring to take you forward in the way that you operate. You know, when I'm ministering with other prophets, if I see them not acting out of a spirit of grace and humility, and they're not open to to being questioned or even to being held accountable for the way they're ministering, that for me is an alarm bell. So I want to make sure that whenever I'm receiving words, the person that is giving me that word is someone who is accountable to leadership and who is prepared to receive that love and correction and support. And to be honest, dear friends, as you're watching, if you've got people that are ministering out of that capacity, then they're probably not ministering out of the heart of God.
Steve, thank you. We're out of time on this particular interview. We're going to have another interview with you very, very soon. And so God bless you and thank you, my friends. This has been a very, very insightful interview. And we're going to have Steve come back and he's going to reveal to us things that we don't know about the prophetic. You stay tuned.
Tusen takk for at du ser på Profetprat. Og hvis du vil hjelpe oss med å produsere flere programmer, så er vi veldig takknemlige for en stor eller liten gave, og du kan gi på Vips eller det kontonummer du ser på skjermen.
You know, there are costs that are associated with this. Would you please help us?
Du vet, det kostnader som for å få gjort dette her, og vi vil være så snill å hjelpe oss.
We would be very, very grateful for that.
Det vil vi være veldig takknemlige for.
Thank you so much for that.
Tusen takk for at du hjelper oss.